Hey everybody, I'm Scott Wikle. You're listening to My Kind of Country. Thanks for joining us on a Monday night. My special guest, I call him a brother in country music. It's my honor to welcome him tonight to the show. He's got a brand new album out called Underhanded Game, and we're going to talk about that, play some of the tracks for you. And I know he's got a lot of great stories because he knows just about everybody there is in country music. It's my honor to welcome Joe Rucker to My Kind of Country. Joe, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Scott. It's good to be here with you. I'm doing just fine. How about yourself?
Man, I'm doing great. It sure is good to talk to you again.
Always good to talk with a fellow brother in country music.
Absolutely. We've been officially adopted by Miss Margie Singleton, so I guess that makes us brothers one way or the other, right?
That's absolutely right. And I just saw Miss Margie earlier this week, and she's got some exciting things going on in her musical life too that I'm sure she'll be telling you about. But yeah, she's got a lot of us adoptees in her family these days. If she ever had a family reunion, she would have to, rent out the Ryman Auditorium, I believe.
I know.
Just to hold everybody.
Well, that's all right. I'm happy to be included. That's a pretty elite bunch, and I'm happy to be part of it. No doubt about it.
Amen. Amen.
Oh, so brand new music from you. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time, and you certainly didn't disappoint. And it's called Underhanded Game. And tell me a little bit about the conception of this album and how you came to choose all these songs.
Well, I tell you, Scott, it is brand new in the sense that it is finally out and brand new to the world. But actually, I've been working on these songs for a few years now. I'm one of these artists that, when I'm working on an album project, I don't just churn it out, one a year or one every couple of years. I take my time and write as things come to me. And, it might take, 3 or 4 years even before the start of the writing process till it gets recorded and out. And in that time, and I'm sure there's other artists that are this way, the concept or idea can change and morph and kind of evolve and in some cases get scaled back, several times over before you end up with what you have coming out. And, we had probably, I would say, 16 or 17 songs we were looking at and started tracking. And, of course, I narrowed that down to 13. And, and it's hard to do that because, you like every song there is, but, certain songs may not fit for this particular project or, also the cost of production is not too cheap. It's coming down somewhat, but it's not as expensive as it was a few years ago, but with the technology the way it is. But at any rate, that's a long answer to kind of give you in a nutshell that the album is brand new, but the songs are, several years old, and we started this process a few years ago. But I'm happy with the way that turned out because I think it's sort of like slow cooking gumbo. You can't rush a good gumbo.
That's right.
you have to cook it for hours, and with albums, sometimes it takes years. Depending. I mean, there's other artists. Don't get me wrong, that can crank one out, every year, and they sound great. But I'm just one of those singer songwriters that my creative process isn't I'm not wired that way.
Well, when you're a songwriter, it's things have to you have to be inspired, and you can't just you can't just sit down and write a song and crank it out like you said. It's gotta and I think it makes for a better album when you've got those life experiences that happen and you've got a story to tell.
Right. And the funny thing is, I'm looking at the album now, the back of the album, the song list here, and I'm seeing songs that I wrote during some of them during a fairly dark period in my life, and I'm now over on the other side of that. And so it's kind of interesting to go out and sing these songs now, knowing where I was at when I wrote them, and being completely in a different state of mind at this point. It's kind of makes me smile in a good way to know that, songs are just like, therapy. They really are. For us writers, it's we pour our heart and soul into them, and they are sort of snapshots of where we're at that particular moment. And not always. Sometimes we can write from other people's experiences, and I do a lot of that as well. But for the most part, we put at least some of what we are in that moment into a song, and so it's kind of like looking at a photograph, from a few years ago.
Absolutely. Well, talking about your life, you've had an awful lot of experience with some great people in country music, and I know your dad was involved in music. Your dad was in the part of the space shuttle program too. Is that right?
Right. My dad, he was a technician in the space shuttle program. Worked on the space shuttle. All of the missions from the time the first missions went up with Columbia until he retired in 2009, and then in 2010 they shut down the program. So he was almost there. He was there a year shy of the entire program.
Wow.
So he, when the first space shuttle went up, the Columbia, he had written a song called "Blast Off Columbia," and a guy by the name of Roy McCall recorded it. My dad wrote it, but Roy had the record on it, and he somehow or another it got in the hands of somebody over there at NASA. I don't know if my dad took it to him or I think a friend of my dad's did. And they decided that they would use that song to wake up the astronauts on their first morning in space.
Oh, wow.
So that song, it gave him his 15 minutes of fame, so to speak, and he can say that his songs have been played out of this world,
That's right.
And it would be very true. And they even have if you can YouTube it, I don't remember the name of it, but NASA, if you YouTube anything about the first space shuttle program, there's an old NASA documentary, and they actually play a clip of the song and their response. Oh, that sounds great, or whatever, whatever they said. And so that's kind of cool to have that a little bit of history. I always thought my dad's job was cool growing up, and I remember Walter Cronkite wrote a little book about space and mentioned my dad in it. So there's a few little neat things that happened along the way. But, he had 3 kids, and we were growing up in Florida, and, he could have, he came up here to Nashville to record a couple times, and they kept telling him, you need to move to Nashville, But he has always been the cautious type, and he knew he had 3 mouths to feed and a family to support, and he had a good paying job at the Kennedy Space Center, so he opted to stay there, and so I often wonder how different it would have been if he actually came up here and pursued that. I might have grown up here.
Yeah.
But everything happens the way it's supposed to, and several years later, I made the move up here in 1998, and so all these years, he says that he's sort of vicariously living through me, and the things that I've gotten to do since I've been here. So, but I do appreciate that foundation that he gave me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he taught me my first 3 chords on the guitar, and I just kind of took it from there. And he's the first writer that I ever started listening to. He's written a lot of songs that, unfortunately, probably not a lot of people will hear, but they're great. They're great songs. And so I just kind of caught the bug from him, I guess.
Well, that's great. Well, I know that when you moved to Nashville, there were some very important people that you idolized and were able to, call friends and work with, the likes of Hank Lachlan and Jack Green and Charlie Louvin. And I know that you
Right.
you sang at Jack's memorial service too, I believe, right?
Yeah, I was blessed. Leanne Malone, his manager, asked me to sing "Statue of a Fool" at his memorial at the Ryman. That was very. There's an interesting story about that, and I'm a deep man of faith. Of course, I don't claim to be perfect or anything. We all have our ups and downs, but I do have a strong faith. And I woke up the morning of the funeral or the memorial service. They didn't like to call it a funeral. It was a life celebration or what have you. And Scott, I couldn't speak above a whisper. I mean, I had completely lost my voice. And here, this was probably about 6 in the morning. Here I was supposed to go on at 10 or 10:30 for this memorial service and sing "Statue" at the Ryman, in front of everybody. And they were broadcasting on WSN and all this stuff. I mean, I remember the guy from the Ryman, the sound guy from the Ryman, calling me like 2 days before, wanting to know, how I like things in the monitors and whatnot, So I mean, everything. I mean, this was just a big deal,
Right.
And here I could not even speak, and I was really, really, really freaking out about it. And I just about called Leanne and told her I'm not going to be able to do this. And but something just told me just go with it, see how it was, I guess I could have tried to pull off a whispering Bill Anderson type thing, when I got there if I didn't have the voice. But I said a little prayer. I said, Lord, you know how important this thing is to me, and not only for what it is, but to honor Jack. Jack was a friend, and this is my way that I can honor. And, I'm just like, just please help me, Lord, And all the way down there, still nothing. I mean, I could not utter a sound. And I get there, and I'm saying as little as possible to people, and they're asking me questions, and I'm almost whispering to them. And, I'm popping cough drops like candy.
Yeah.
And so I get down there, and we're backstage, and one of the dressing rooms, and Jimmy Capps is there, and Tim Atwood, and a few other guys, and you're like, well, let's run over the song, And so I had my guitar there, and I start playing it. And Scott, I mean, I don't know how to explain it except that God worked a miracle. I mean, my voice was open. It was full. It was right on pitch. It was everything it should be. And I got through the rehearsal fine, and, they called me out when it was time to go, and I did the performance fine. In fact, one of the odd things was, I try, I've played the Ryman a few times. When I'm on that stage, it's so nerve-wracking to me because I think about everybody else that's been on the stage.
Yeah.
And so if you're dead center stage and you look up at the stained glass windows, the one that's kind of off to the right of dead center, each pane has a different color glass, and the top one has like a yellow painted glass. I always stare at that same spot, that yellow painted glass, to keep me from just either breaking up or forgetting my words or whatever. And usually, you know what, it's worked all the 3 or 4 times that I've done it. And so I'm not paying attention to who is in the audience or anything. And, of course, nobody's cheering at a memorial service. But I do hear this little, when I'm hitting the last note of statue, I'm hearing this little woo-hoo, you know, and I'm thinking, who in the world is doing that, you know? And I look down, and Garth Brooks is on the front row looking straight up at me. And I thought to myself, thank God I didn't see him. Or I would have, you know, there's no telling what would have happened.
Wow.
I got through my song, Scott, and I got off stage, and people were talking to me. And within less than 5 minutes, my voice was totally gone.
Wow.
I had no voice.
That's amazing.
So it's like to me, the Lord gave me my voice back for that, you know, 45-minute period of time or hour or whatever it was.
Wow.
Make sure that I got through that. He answered my prayer, in my opinion. You know, I mean, I have no doubt.
Absolutely.
And then you know, whatever was wrong with me, the congestion or whatever, came back, and it had to run its course for the next couple of days until I got better. But he healed me during that time, and I'm so thankful for that. And but you know, that was a quite an honor for me, quite an honor. And you had mentioned Hank Lachlan. I just want to say that probably that man is responsible for me even wanting to move to Nashville. Hank had a space connection too. At that time, his daughter was married. They're no longer together, but at that time he was married. She was married to a coworker of my dad's. So that's how we got involved with the Lachlans. You know,
okay.
Hank's daughter lived in Merritt Island, and my dad, I remember when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I think it was, yeah, about that age, he said, we're going over to Merritt Island, which is about an hour away from where we live, to meet this guy, Hank Lachlan, because, you know, I worked with his son-in-law. And, you know, he sang me, my dad started singing Send Me the Pillow You Dream On, and I thought, wow, I do recognize that song. That's kind of cool, you know. And but I didn't really know anything about Hank Lachlan. You know, I had at this point I'm 11-year-old. That you know, I knew George Strait and Reba McEntire and the guys that were on the radio that at that time in the '80s. You know, but I didn't really have a drive or a yearning to learn about country music history. And so I went into that thinking, man, this is going to be a boring meeting. You know, it's going to be a boring dinner. You know, I better, you know, bring something for me to do, you know, because I'll probably be bored out of my mind. And I get there and we have dinner. And then we're sitting in the living room, and Hank is telling stories about how he got George Jones one of his first jobs, you know, back in the 50s. And he was telling stories about this one and that one, Dottie West. I mean, all these stories that he started telling. I don't know. It was like a switch went on inside me. And here I was sitting in front of a man that's literally sold millions and millions of records. But he was just so down to earth and humble that, you know, it just shocked me. You know, the way that just how laid back he was about everything. And I am telling you, I caught the bug at that time.
That was it.
This was back in the late '80s, and you know that's pre-internet and all this stuff, so you couldn't go Google anything.
Yeah.
And you had to. I know you know this too, because you know you come from that generation too. You had to, you know, find records at like yard sales and Goodwills, and they were all scratched to heck usually. And And it was just so. I remember the first country music encyclopedia I got. I think I read that thing from cover to cover and still was like not satisfied. Like I had to have more, and I, records were expensive back then too. Like you'd come to Nashville, the Great Escape here in Nashville, where everybody goes to buy their records and things. Back then, now a record album you can buy it for $3 or $4 usually, and it'd be in decent shape. Back then, even the scratched ones were like $15-20.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't the internet to sell them on, and they were just harder to find.
Yeah.
But all of that to say, Hank Lachlan really sparked my love for the old country music and the Nashville sound era, and even pre-Nashville sound era. And I really started digging back. And when I was in high school, I was looked at like I had 3 heads, or a freak, because my buddies, this was in the early '90s. They were going down the road and had their rap music thumping, or Red Hot Chili Peppers, or somebody like that, and I'm going down the road and I'm blaring Ernie Ashworth and Little Jimmy Dickens and Hank Lachlan, and they're looking at me like, this guy has lost his mind. He's never going to get a girlfriend listening to this kind of stuff. But I did.
That sounds familiar.
But anyway.
Well, I should let folks know too that you recorded a song with Hank on your previous album, and it's called "For Just a Little While Tonight." And beautiful song.
Well, thank you. And that's one that Hank and Jim Reeves wrote together. They co-wrote that song, and he told me a little story about that. They were coming back from the first ever RCA Records European trip. They were in Germany, and they had gone to several army posts over there. And it was a long flight, as you can imagine, on the way back. And they got bored and started writing songs, and that's one that they had written.
Wow.
And the only other recording of that song that is in existence is Ray Conniff's Singers.
Oh, no kidding.
Did that.
Huh.
And it was totally different. It was more upbeat. I slowed it way down. And it didn't really do anything for them. It was just on an album. It was just a song on an album, and it had been sitting for all those years. And how I found out about it, I'm a BMI writer, and so I was looking through BMI's catalog one day, and I was trying to pull up different songs, and I wanted to record a song of Hank's, but I didn't want it to be, one of the more well-known ones. I wanted it to be kind of a little bit obscure. And I see this thing, it says, written by Hank Lachlan and Jim Reeves. I'm like, wow, I've got to find out about this song. So I called Hank's wife, Anita, and she said, oh, yeah. So I've got a tape of it if you want me to send it to you. I said, please do. And so she sent me the tape of Ray Conniff. And so I asked her if she thought Hank would do it with me the next time he come to town. She said, well, I had the phone to him. You ask him yourself, And so I asked him. He said, "Well, yeah, I'll do it." So just whenever I come up to do the opera or something, you schedule it. And so we did, and what a thrill that was.
Absolutely.
I would not, to me, it hasn't sold a blue million, as Roy Acuff would often say. It hasn't sold a blue million, but it's worth more than $1 million to me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's take a little break, and we're supposed to be talking about the new album, but this is all interesting stuff, so this is great. But let's play that song, and this is off the album Untangle My Mind, and I want to play Memory Maker on that album too. I really like that one, the Mel Tillis song, and then we'll come back and get into the new album and play some cuts off of that, and a lot of great stories.
Alrighty.
Joe Rucker, as we continue with My Kind of Country. Stay with us. We'll be back to talk to Joe here in just a moment.
I'd give a little while tonight. For now I find I must surrender to a love I've tried to find. All that you do, do with all of your might, for things halfway done are never done right. These words would mean much more with things the way they were before, for just a little while tonight. All that you do, do with all of your might, for things halfway done are never done right. These words would mean much more with things the way they were before, for just a little while tonight. For just a little while tonight. She's a heartbreaker, she's a love taker, she's a memory maker, and I bet she's making memories tonight. Walking all over this lonely city, nothing in my heart but a full self-pity. I'm still in love with the girl that didn't do me right, but there ain't no way for me to forget her. I ain't never been cheated any better. I bet she's cheating someone else tonight. She's a heartbreaker, she's a love taker, she's a memory maker, and I bet she's making memories tonight. Well, her memory's like a bug and it keeps on crawling over my mind, and the tears keep falling, thinking about the things that might have been. Well, this old heart of mine can't take it. I still love her, I can't shake it. I bet she's shaking someone else tonight. She's a heartbreaker, she's a love taker, she's a memory maker, and I bet she's making memories tonight. Yeah, she's a heartbreaker, she's a love taker, she's a memory maker, and
All right, that is music from Joe Rucker from the album Untangle My Mind with Hank Lachlan, and a fabulous, fabulous album. Joe, where is your music available?
Well, of course, you can go to my website, joerucker.com, and find it. But it's also out on all the major streaming sites, Amazon, iTunes, and I believe Rhapsody. And those folks are, I think Napster bought Rhapsody, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, it's on all those outlets.
All right, and CD Baby too, I believe, right?
Yeah, CD Baby, right? And they can order a physical CD, and I'm always glad to autograph those if they contact me at my website or send me an email at joeruckermusic@yahoo.com. Be glad to do that for you.
All right, fabulous. We were talking about Jack Green earlier, and I wanted to mention this. This was a really cool memory for me. You and I met at the NACMA Awards down in Pigeon Forge a couple years ago with Margie Singleton, and we all ended up at the hotel doing a jam. Bobby Marquez was there, and Carl Acuff, and we were doing songs. I did a Jack Green song, and then you came right back with Statue of a Fool, and I was just like, wow, I'm done. That's it. I love the fact.
I appreciate that. That was a fun little time that we had there, and
it was great.
I remember too at the Country Tonight Theater where they had that. They have all those artist displays out front, and they had one of Jack's outfits there, and it's kind of neat going through all that. That was a fun trip.
It sure was, and the thing I love about you is you never shy away from those the upper echelon of singer songs is what I call them, like Farewell Party and songs like that, and you just absolutely nail them, my friend. I'm just amazed.
I appreciate that so much. It's because I have such a loud mouth, and I'm full of hot air, Scott. I mean, that's really, you got to get that hot air behind there, to hit those notes. And my kids all the time are telling me that I'm full of hot air, so I guess that's why it works.
Well, hey, you got to stick with what works, Well, folks, the new album is called Underhanded Game, and Joe, you wrote pretty much everything on here with the exception of a couple that were written by Mr. Jim Glazier, and you've got Jim singing a song with you on this album, too. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I tell you, Scott, and this is one of those things, too, that, we said in the first segment how it takes me sometimes a few years to get things going. Well, we recorded this song, Happy Hour Blues, with Jim several years ago. Had the track down on it, and it's one of two songs on this album that Andy Reese of the Time Jumpers produced. And so, of course, the Glazer brothers had a version of this song out originally, and Jim wrote it. He co-wrote it with Kathy Pelletier. So the Glazer brothers had this on an album, and I think it was in 81 or 82, their last Elektra album. But it was a very different arrangement. And then Jim came along on his last album and re-recorded it, and we sort of arranged it the way he did it on his solo project. And I just asked him, I said, because Jim in later years he would go through spells where he would do some things, and then he would kind of retreat back to the house for a year or so, and then he'd come back out and do a few more things, and then he was kind of trying to decide whether he wanted back in it or whether he just wanted to kind of stay at home and be a hermit for a little while. And so I had to coax him to kind of doing this. We had been friends for years, but he finally said, "Oh, okay." He said, "If you really think that I wouldn't bring you down by doing it. And I said, bring me down. I said, you're going to add a lot to it. I want to do something with you, because you're my friend and everything. He said, all right, I'll do it for you. And so he came over to Andy's house where we recorded it, and recorded that a few years ago. Never dreamt that we wouldn't get it released before his passing. I mean, that was kind of heartbreaking for me.
Yeah.
And it's been almost just about a year, I guess.
Yeah.
Since he passed away.
Well, this is probably his last recording. Is that right?
I would venture to say, unless he was working on something else that I didn't know about.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as I know, this was the last song he did. And he did get to hear the final mix. It just wasn't released. So I'm thankful he got to hear that. He also got to hear Woman.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, you did a stellar version of that on this album, too. Classic song.
But yeah, I appreciate that. But I tell you, it's just like the Hank Lachlan thing, or anybody that I get to record with like that. It just means so much to me because these guys are my heroes. I grew up listening to their music on the radio and on records and seeing them on TV. And, I still to this day, I'm just like a kid. To this day, I'm pinching myself saying, I know these people. I've recorded with them. How cool is that? I'm not worthy to walk a mile in their shoes, but they're recording with me and they're singing with me, and it just I'm dumbfounded. It just means the world. I mean, these guys are just
well, it's
on water as far as concerned.
It's a testament of the kind of person you are, and the kind of man that you are. You're a man of God, and not only that. You've got a tremendous talent, and that's obviously something that they recognize and are happy to be a part of, and you've got Marty Rabin on this album with you too. And I just a couple weeks ago I had his brother Tim on the show. He's got a great bluegrass group called Merle Monroe, and we were talking about that. And Marty's been on my show before too. What a great guy he is. You guys did Mama's Rockin' Chair.
Marty is. Yeah, Mama's Rockin' Chair. Yeah, that's a song my dad wrote. Marty is, he's crazy as a loon, but I mean that in the greatest of ways. He is just funny guy to be around, and especially if you get him talking in his New York accent. He has a New York accent that he goes into sometimes, and of course it's the fakest New York accent you've heard in your life, and there's a lot of Alabama and Florida twang in that accent, even though he thinks he's not saying it. But Marty actually, of course, he was in Muscle Shoals for so long down there, and he still lives there. But he was actually born and raised in Florida, and not too far from where I'm from. And we both come out of Sanford, Florida, or that area. And and his dad built houses there, and the land, I mean, he had a construction company that built houses all over Central Florida. And so I remember Marty, the first time I was ever around him, I was like 5 years old, because we had our little Rucker family group that my dad, mom, and my brother and sister and I would go around to barbecues and churches and school events and things like that. And I remember we were doing this event down at the community center in Geneva, Florida, and Marty was there with his bluegrass group he had back then. And this would have had to have been 1981, something along that line. And I can remember us being on the same show with him there, and so for him to, and I remember a fellow musician by the name of Boyce Trail that was from down there. He had told my dad was asking, where did Marty and the little bluegrass group go? And he said, oh, well, Marty decided he was going to move up to Nashville, make it big in the business, and they were sort of, kind of talking about that, you know, and sure enough, he did. I mean, he came to Nashville and then veered back to Muscle Shoals, where Shenandoah kind of came out of.
Yeah.
He still hit it big, and but you know, it's just funny how you know, life sometimes works out. We got together here a few years ago and started hanging around each other. And of course, he did not remember me. I was just a little tiny tot back then. But he knew, you know, we all knew some of the same people. And what a great guy he is. He's just
a
fantastic.
great guy. Yeah, I've had some great conversations with him. Absolutely.
The song turned out great. So you know, there's another one of those pinch me moments. You know, it's not every day you get to sing with a Grammy Award winner.
That's
you know,
right.
And,
that's right. Well, you did a great job on it. In fact, let's take a little break here and let's play those songs that we talked about. We'll play the one with Jim Glazier and the one with Marty, and I want to play Woman, Woman, because, man, that's a stellar version of that. And we'll come back and talk to Joe some more. The album is called Underhanded Game. JoeRucker.com is the website. And it's got some other great songs there I want to talk about. So, Joe, if you got time, I'd love to talk to you some more.
Absolutely.
All right. Here's Joe Rucker. These are cuts from the brand new album, Underhanded Game, as we continue with My Kind of Country, and Joe will be back with us in just a few minutes.
He can't remember when he first admitted the truth. One day he just stopped believing the dreams of his youth. Now he goes down to a bar after work every day. At 2-for-1 prices he drinks till the pain goes away.
She married John thinking she'd have a life of her own. Now she just hopes to survive till the kids are all grown. She looks at the clock and the bottle of gin on the shelf. Then pours out a drink and starts happy hour by herself. They've got the happy hour blues. Nothing to live for and nothing to lose. Hating their lives that leave them so little to choose. So they give up and give in to the happy hour blues. As he plays the jukebox, the warmth of the whiskey sets in. Meanwhile at home she sits back in the glow of her gin. When he gets home she won't ask and won't care where he's been. Inside he's dying as she lies there crying again. They've got the happy hour blues. Nothing to live for and nothing to lose. Hating their lives that leave them so little to choose. So they give up and
and give in to the happy hour blues. So every day they give in to the happy hour blues.
Well, honey, you can take the kids and sit under the apple tree. The auctioneer has a few words to say to me. We gotta get things all lined up to sell my pickup truck. Remember now, we don't need any sympathy. Well, the economy sure dealt us a dirty hand, and we can't afford no longer work the land. The more I borrowed, the deeper in debt I got. Wish this was a bad dream, but I guess it's not. Well, you see that old Ford tractor over there. Talk about plowing some fields, we've done our share. We've sowed some beans and corn. Lord, where did we go wrong? The light at the end of the tunnel is just not there. Hey, Mr. Auctioneer, don't you sell my mama's rocking chair. It's the only thing that still means beans to me. Hey, Mr. Auctioneer, don't you sell my mama's rocking chair. 'Cause that's where she first held me on her knee.
There's that old Willie Jeep, and without a care, we drove it last year to the county fair. There's that new thrashing machine, that old bull that is so mean. Lord, America needs to bow her head in prayer. Hey, Mr. Auctioneer, don't sell my mama's rocking chair. It's the only thing that still means beans to me. Hey, Mr. Auctioneer, don't sell my mama's rocking chair. 'Cause that's where she first held me on her knee.
I just wanna cherish her memory, her memory. Something's wrong between us that your laughter cannot hide, and you're afraid to let your eyes meet mine. Lately, when I love you, I know you're not satisfied. They think I don't see, and it hurts to have them think that you're that kind. But it's knowing that you're looking back that's really killing me. That certain look when she is on the move, and a man can always tell what's on her mind. I hate to have to say it, but that look's all over you.
All right, folks, you're listening to My Kind of Country. I'm Scott Wikle. That is brand new music from Joe Rucker from his album Underhanded Game. JoeRucker.com is the website, and also CD Baby, Amazon, iTunes, all the usual suspects that we get our music from these days. And great guest artist on there with Joe. And Joe, you have written some fantastic songs on this album, and I just know that there's going to be a cool story behind this one. And one of my favorites, it's called 150 Old Mims Road.
Oh yeah, that's very, very near and dear to my heart there. 150 Old Mims Road is the address of my grandparents' home there in Florida, and of course they're both gone on to be with the Lord several years back, but that home there was the focal point of my childhood. I mean, everything revolved. I mean, it was just the center of the universe for me. Mm-hmm. It was there was a little dirt drive across the street from it that you went down to go to my parents' house. So we lived almost literally across the street from them. And, you know, when I'd get off the bus, you know, I had a choice. I could either walk home or just go right over to Granny's house. And I guess you probably can guess which one I chose. And my mom never did worry about me because she knew it was over by Granny's, you know, unless I wasn't home by supper or whatever. And a lot of times Granny would spoil my supper because she would always fix me a snack before I went home, you know. And she was good as I tell people I am not a mama's boy, I'm a granny's boy, and Granny always spoiled me rotten. But at any rate, my granddad died in 2005, and I had a song I wrote about him on my Untangle My Mind album called Best Day of My Life. And on this record, what happened after he passed away, and then about a year later, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so we had to move her into an assisted living. And I remember, wanting to walk through that old house one more time before the last time I'd be there, to see it. And so as I'm doing that, I sit on the brick fireplace there, and all these words are just coming to me, and about this place. And I'm sitting there, and the room is completely empty. It's completely silent. But all of these memories keep flooding back of all the Thanksgivings and Christmas dinners we had there, all the get-togethers, all the laughter, and it was just a bittersweet moment, and really it hurt me worse walking away from that place almost than it did them passing in a way. It's just because so much of my life was there.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, it was sold to these two brothers, these younger guys, and they've come in, they've done their own thing, and I thought, well, man, I'm not going to like going down there, and because I have to see it, to go to my parents' house. I'm not going to like seeing somebody else in my grandparents' house and this and that. But it was actually good closure for me to see another family in that home. It was kind of like, things must go on.
Yeah.
Things have to, you have to move on, and it's kind of cool seeing their take on how that place should be. So, but it's a very special song to me. It will always be.
It's one of my favorites on this project. It really, I have a lot of childhood memories like that too, and most of my family's gone now, and the places that they lived are either gone or someone else lives there. So I really related to that song. So I'm really glad you shared that story with me. That's a fabulous song. Tell me about the title song.
Underhanded Game. Well, I tell you, in life, we often run into folks that either in friendships or romantic relationships, whatever it may be, that just kind of what I call pull and prod you a little bit, kind of they're hot one minute, cold the next kind of thing, and they've always seemed to have some kind of underhanded game or sneakiness, shadiness, I guess is the word to use today about them. And hey, sometimes we're the aggressors and sometimes we're the victim, but this is just a song about that, and how, how to cope and deal with that kind of thing. And so it ended up being a title track. We were wondering, there was 2 or 3 options that we were kind of tossed around, but that one always kept coming back up. And as well as I do, Scott, that I love traditional country music, hardcore traditional country music. But when you play this song, it's got a little bit of an edge to it, and so there are a couple of songs on here that do, and but it doesn't discard my country roots completely. But it's just it just shows another side, maybe a little darker edge to it,
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good song, and it doesn't matter what genre you're going to put it in. It's still good music. So it's I applaud you for
it. I appreciate that.
And there's certainly no denying your your reverence to country music. You are so well respected, and I know you've won the Academy of Local Musicians Hall of Fame award, and that's wonderful and very well deserved. And you've been on the Midnight Jamboree. You've hosted that. You've been, of course, on WSM, the Wheeling Jamboree. So people love what you're doing, and from my aspect, I want to thank you for everything you do for not only country music, but for all the folks that are still with us. They're the true legends of country music, like Margie Singleton, and helping to keep their legacy alive and keeping them relevant in the music world today, and playing music with them and writing songs with them and singing with them. And I think that's to be commended, and I thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that, Scott. Just because somebody becomes older doesn't mean that they lose their talent. Oftentimes, their talent is still growing, and especially in the case of Margie. Margie Singleton is writing more today than she has, I would say, in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
I mean, the ideas that pour out of this woman, and people think I'm joking when I say this, she wears me out at times because she's got so much energy. She has the everyday aches and pains like anyone in their 80s would. But her mind is just so chock full of ideas, and every single one of them are great.
Yeah.
So why, as a society, that we put folks like that sometimes on the back burner, I will never know, because they are such resources for us. They're invaluable. Their wisdom, what they have to say. I've heard it said in interviews sometimes where they interview music business folks, and they'll say, well, it may not be relevant for today or whatever. I can guarantee you anything that these folks are writing or saying, we should be listening to. It's very relevant. They
Amen.
can help us.
Amen to that.
In what's going on in today's world. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. Her and Jeannie C. Riley and all these great folks. They're just because you reach a certain age doesn't mean that you've lost your usefulness. I mean, they're plenty useful, and I learn from them every single day. And the other thing that I would just like to say is a big thank you to folks like yourself, who are champions of this kind of music. And without you, Scott, playing this stuff and really bringing it to the forefront and keeping it alive, what would happen to it? Well, I mean, the short answer is it would die out like it's been doing for years. But you're not allowing that to happen. You're keeping it out front and playing. I'm so tickled to hear about some of the show ideas you have for different things that you were talking to me about before we went on the air, because people need to hear about those things. The Nashville sound, the Bakersfield sound. Kids today. And I say kids, I'm not talking about children, although they fall into that realm too. But these 20-somethings that are coming up today, they are really hungry for something real.
Yeah.
And I see, more often than not, them digging into stuff. And they like historical type, music, and they're kind of going backwards. So I see this stuff, if we keep plugging away at this, I see it circling back around.
Oh, absolutely.
That's my hope and prayer.
Yeah, I think it already is. There are so many people listening to shows that I'm doing, and they're very, they're interested in the interviews. They're interested in hearing the music, and with the, like you mentioned earlier about the internet and all the resources we have now, you can get on there and you can discover an artist and go from A to Z, every song I've ever put out, and find stuff you're going to love, and that's so cool too. I love that. I mean, I wish if they'd have had that when we were kids,
we'd have probably failed school.
I know. I know.
we would have our nose in music so much we wouldn't have got anything else done. You know.
That's all right. That'd been okay with me.
Me too. Me too.
Well, Joe, God bless you, my friend, and I want to thank you so much for taking all this time to be on my show, and it's been an honor. And we're going to play some more of these songs, and we're going to keep playing your music, and I know that you're helping Margie get some stuff done, and of course I want to get her back on the show when she gets that stuff done, and play that stuff too. And wish you the very best, and keep us posted on the happenings with you, and you're certainly welcome on the show anytime.
I appreciate that, Scott, and thank you so much for having me. And I'm going to ship you off a new ear because I've talked yours off. but I thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Well, it's been great, and when you got something good to say and interesting stories, that's what it's all about as far as I'm concerned. So, folks, please again go to joerucker.com. We'll have that information on our Facebook page, CD Baby, Amazon, iTunes. Get this new album, Underhanded Game, and pick up some of Joe's other music too. We played some stuff from Untangle My Mind that is absolutely stellar, and if you're in the Nashville area, Joe's playing a lot down there, so make sure you go see him. Joe Rucker, thanks again for being on My Kind of Country.
All right, thank you, Scott.
Wish I could be there to see your face, to look at the lines your tears have traced. When my memory becomes too real and longing is all you feel, wish I could be there. Oh, wish I could be there. Wish I could be there when you realize that you threw away the man that would have loved you all your life. What you thought would last left you cold, and now you're longing for me to hold. Wish I could be there. Oh, wish I could be there. Wishful thinking, maybe so, but I'd still like to be a fly upon the wall. For as sure as my heart beats, I've always known you're gonna miss me, you're gonna need me. And there'll come a day when you want my touch, 'cause you can't outrun someone that loves you this much. You'll remember the times I built you up, and then you're gonna see you wish it had been me. Wish I could be there when you cry out my name and you finally hear the silence of my pain. 'Cause then I would hold you and tell you it's okay. Wish I could be there. You ought to know by now my heart won't ever change. Wish I could be there. Oh, wish I could be there. Same old sound of squeaking hinges as I open the storm door. Familiar smell of an old house I've smelled 1,000 times before. But new to my senses is this silence I've never known. At this house across from Mom and Dad at 150 Old Mims Road. These four walls have seen and heard a lot in their time. Back to the days they lived their lives so young and in their prime. Papa in his easy chair, Granny cooking on the stove. Now there's nothing left but memories at 150 Old Mims Road. If I had a nickel for all the laughter, joy, and every single tear shed under this roof of contentment on down through the years, I'd buy each broken heart a ticket and tell them right where to go. Back to my childhood days at 150 Old Mims Road. Doesn't seem that long ago, but he's been gone now for years. And with him went her heart and mind, so she moved away from here. When I visit, she's still lost in time, and I play just like it's so. As she talks like things are still the same at 150 Old Mims Road. Well, I guess it's time to get back now. I'll take one last look around. Who knows when I'll be back this way again. Maybe next time I do, another child will have found a place to make sweet memories like I did. 'Cause if I had a nickel for all the laughter, joy, and every single tear shed under this roof of contentment on down through the years, I'd buy each broken heart a ticket and tell them right where to go. Back where my heart remains at 150 Old Mims Road. I'd buy myself a one-way ticket and you know right where I'd go. Back to my childhood days at 150